2, 1. We are live.
Good afternoon. I'd like to call this session of Board of Revision to order and begin by acknowledging that we are in Treaty 1 territory, the home and traditional land of the Anishinaabe, Ojibwe, Innu Cree, and Dakota peoples, and the national homeland of the Red River Métis. Our drinking water comes from Shoal 41st Nation in Treaty 3 territory. With me today is Brett McIntyre to my left, and Larry Robinson farther to my left. My name is Harvey Diamond. The City Assessment Department is represented by Rodney Fontanella today, and our hearing secretary, Stephen Munn. We'll be hearing applications for revision of the assessment rules in accordance with the Municipal Assessment Act. The master's revision is requested, have been described in each application, and we will limit discussion to those matters. The statements that are made at this hearing are sworn testimony, and anyone speaking to the matters must be sworn in. Be advised that comparison to assessments of properties are not considered as evidence of market value by the Board of Revision. The Board of Revision is appointed annually by Council as independent of it and the City Administration. It makes a decision based on the evidence provided at this hearing and issues a written order that will be mailed to all parties as soon as possible thereafter. Please note the Board's decision with respect to the application may be appealed. The Manitoba Municipal Board, if the matter pertains to assessed value or classification, or at the Court of King's Bench, if the matter pertains to the application of exemption from taxation. Should a party wish to appeal, information on do so will be included with the Board's order. To make the hearing process, I will confirm the points of appeal with your property to be addressed with each applicant following the swearing in. We'll then have the assessment testimony followed by questions that the applicant may have, and then the applicant testimony followed by any questions. Each side will give an opportunity to summarize the wish to do so. Once all the evidence about an application has been brought forward, the applicant may leave. The person will repeat for each item on the docket today. The session will close after all applications have been heard, and the Board will deliberate in private and make its decisions. We receive the Board's order, decision by written mail as soon as possible. As information, all public hearings are live streamed, recorded, and will be part of a public record. And today we'll be hearing items 1, 4, 6, and 9. And Mr. Lund, you can swear in the first applicant and the assessor at this point.
Okay, Mr. Assessor, please state your full name.
Rodney Fontanilla.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Mr. Applicant, please stand. Please state your full name.
Ryan Oliveros.
Do you affirm that the evidence you're about to give at this hearing is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. You may be seated.
And first property is 1490 Pembina Highway.
Okay, so if we're ready to go, the file number is 22-3168. The roll number is 0308-028-8000. The address is 1490 Pembina Highway. The 2023 assessed value had gone out at $587,000. And I do have a recommendation to make on the file.
Okay, go ahead.
If I can guide your attention to page 8 of my brief. I'll give you a second to get there. So we originally had on the valuation, we had one premise associated at 2,100 square feet. We had it valued at $20.84 a square foot for a total potential rent of $43,764. We do have model parameters on there of a 6% vacancy, 3% expense, and a $7 shortfall, which drives us to our net operating income of $39,022. And the cap rate originally was 6.65%, which brought us to a rounded value of $587,000. For the recommendation, I have made an adjustment to the rental rate based on market data. So I'm proposing a revised rental rate of $17 a square foot for 2,100 square feet, which brings us to a revised income of $35,700. The same model parameters are in place of 6% vacancy, a $7 shortfall, and a 3% expense, which brings us to a revised net operating income of $31,669. And then we have applied the model cap rate of 6.65% to have a revised assessment of $476,000.
Thank you. And does the applicant accept this recommendation?
So we reviewed the offer. I reviewed the offer with my client. And while we do very much appreciate the offer, Mr. Pontinia, we would have to respectfully decline because of the cap rate in this case.
Okay,
Okay, so Mr. Mendel, you can proceed then.
sure. So if you can go back to page 2 of my brief, I have included a pad eye view of the subject property, so we can see its orientation on Crane Avenue and Pembina Highway. Following that, on page 3, we have an overhead view of the subject property. On page 4, we have a north-facing view and a west-facing view of the subject property. On page 5, I have included the latest Google Street View map images showing the approach, face-on, and departing the subject property. We have received income and expense mailer information from the subject, so there's no problem there. Actually, I do have a sale there, but that looks to be post-reference. I'd like to exclude that from the record. So we cannot look at it. That must have evaded me when I was putting the brief together there, so I apologize for that. And we do have on page 7 our commercial rental properties. So I have it grouped into 2. I have comparables based on use. So they're also convenience stores comparable to the subject itself. And as well, I've included some retail rent comparables from within the neighborhood just to get an idea of the rental rates being received in that neighborhood. And so you'll notice for the convenience stores that I do have a spread from $15.50 per square foot at the lower end to $33 at 1103 Pembina Highway down the street at the much higher end. And then my retail rent comparables from the neighborhood have a spread of $18 at the lower end and then $22.50 at the higher end. We've already gone through the valuation, so we don't need to hash over it too much, but nonetheless, the original valuation was for $587, and with the recommended value, it's now $476 proposed. And then on page 9, we have an income value summary of the subject property. On page 10, we have some cap rate information. Page 11 has our Municipal Assessment Act excerpts. And then page 12, and heading towards the conclusion of my brief, is the subject's income and expense mailer information. And that is my presentation.
Thank you. So if you have any questions, you can ask them now.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Pontinia, thank you for your presentation. Regarding your cap rate, it is 6.65%. That's correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so looking at your page 10 here of your cap rates, you have the property types for retail here as regional, power center, community, neighborhood, and strip. Which property is this? What is the subject property classified as?
So the subject property is classified as a commercial convenience store. So we actually don't have specific cap rate information on this particular property type. So the lowest that we have showing our portfolio there would be strip malls, and we have a cap rate spread of 6 to 6.8% between the 20th and 80th percentile.
Okay. And have you reviewed the income and expense mailers for the subject?
I did. I took a brief, I took a look at it to see what I could glean, and I did discover that I'd have to refer to some notes for some exact information. I did do an analysis, but it would appear that the subject does have a price per square foot as well as a percentage rent that's included on the property. I believe that's the subject. I look at so many of these, but I believe that would be the one on this one here. I'm just trying to look at it sideways here. But yes, there is a percentage rent, so that would be the one. So I did, if I were to bring up a document here, I did do an analysis on it. I know that it was a little bit on the lower end. I believe if I were to think about it, it was just south of $15 a square foot. But that was just based on the 2020 year, and based on the past 3 years of performance as well as market data, I felt comfortable that $17 a square foot is an appropriate rent rate for this property, given that it is on Pembina Highway, and convenience stores were, from my understanding, not too negatively affected by the pandemic and the closures.
Okay. But you'd agree with me that the rental that the rent for this property hasn't changed. It stayed at an annual rent of or an annual base rent of $12,047.52 a year, and then the percentage rent has remained at 2.5% for a number of years.
I'd have to refer to the last 3 years of mailers. I don't have the information in front of me, so I can't comment on exactly what the values would be from year to year.
Would an investor see, well, so let me clarify. You only review 2020?
I looked at 2020, I looked at 2019, 2018, but I don't have 2019 and 2018 in front of me. I only have what's in my brief that I can refer to right now. So I can say that I took a look at them, and from my understanding, the rents varied slightly from year to year based on the performance of the subject. But overall, it seemed pretty consistent. I will agree to that.
Okay, and would a potential investor see that as possibly a perceived risk that this property is not able to achieve a higher rent than it has over the past 3 years that you have reviewed?
I mean, I'm not an investor, so it's a little difficult for me to speculate on what someone else would think. I can only estimate based on the information that I've reviewed.
Okay. Those are all my questions. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pontanilla.
You're welcome.
Mr. Roberts, do you have any questions?
I do not at this time.
Mr. Wagner, do you have any questions?
I have no questions.
And I don't either. So you can go ahead with your brief, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Okay, so the subject property at 1490 Pembina Highway, the roll number is 03-08028800. The file number is 22-3168. Just looking at page 2 of my brief here, we are requesting that this board reduce the assessment from $587,000 to $404,000. So I did drive by this property last week. So just to mention that, going on to page 6 of my brief, we can see an aerial shot of the subject property, as well as a photo of the front of the subject. And we just have the side elevation here on page 7. So the subject, it is a 1-story commercial building, and it is currently being used as a convenience store. It's located on the east side of Pembina Highway, at the southeast corner of Crane Avenue and Pembina Highway. The retail store was built in 1971 and is of masonry construction with a planned and gross floor area of 2,100 square feet with a reported wall height of 10 feet. The subject site, it is a little irregular in shape here, with the total site size as recorded by the City Assessment Department of 10,695 square feet with C2 commercial zoning. And just skipping ahead to page 13 of my brief here. So on page 13, I say the subject property has a lease that commenced on May 1st of 2017, and it has been running for it's under a 5-year term until April 30th of 2022. The base rent is $1,003.86 per month, or $5.74 per square foot. There is also a percentage rent, which is based on 2.5% of annual sales over and above the actual rent in place. For the February 2021 fiscal year, the percentage rent was $18,526.56, and the total income for the property was $30,574.08, and this works out to $14.56 per square foot. Now, I've also included the prior year's income on page 13 as well, so we can see that the rents per square foot for this property range from $11.71 per square foot to $14.56 a square foot. 2020 was more than likely affected by COVID, which is why it is lower at that end. So in our analysis, we also look to the rent comparables that I show here. So they range from $12.50 a square foot to $22 per square foot. Index number 5 is a convenience store, and I have included photos of my lease comparables starting from page 41 of my evidence. up to page 45. So those are all those are there for you all to refer to. The subject is older than the above comparisons, except for index number 5. I apologize, that was an error. That should say index number 5, which is 4 years older than the subject. So my best comparable here, I do feel, is index number 5. It is also a convenience store, and you'll see from the photo as to why it is also a 7-Eleven and is renting at $17 per square foot. So that is the lease rate that I've applied here, and the assessor has agreed to it in his recommendation. For our vacancy allowance, we've applied 6%, and this is consistent with what the city has applied. For the shortfall rate, we've also applied $7 per square foot. And for unrecovered expenses here, we have applied 7% of the effective net market income. This is based upon a standard allowance for 2% for structural reserves and 5% as a stabilized allowance for non-recoverable expenses that arise in the competent management and operation of the property. So I have provided a detailed submission for our non-recovered expenses as well. For the capitalization rate, the city has applied a 6.65% cap rate. However, we submit that a cap rate of no less than 7.5% be applied in this case. This is an older 7-Eleven, so we have classified this as lower quality, and that will I will provide further clarification to that in my cap rate presentation. So based on the parameters that we have applied here, we have arrived at a value on page 15 of my brief here for my income summary of $404,000. And that concludes my presentation for the subject property itself. And I suppose, Mr. Chair, we want to ask questions about my main brief first and then move on to the cap rate study.
I think your main brief looks like it's pretty comparable to what the assessor has. I think the cap is the main question here. I think you're going to have to convince us that the city's cap is too low and yours is more reasonable. Otherwise, I think you're pretty well in agreement.
Okay.
Yeah. So you may as well go on with your cap. I think it's the question of your argument.
I'm sorry?
So you may as well go on with your cap argument because that's the basis of your argument here.
Okay. Sounds good. Okay, so our retail cap study, I understand that it is quite lengthy, so I will do my best to try to summarize as many points as I can while still making my main points here. Okay, so going to page 2 of my cap rate evidence. So the cap rate, it represents the required or acceptable rate of return on a real estate investment. It is influenced by 3 major items, which is the perceived risk associated with the investment's income capacity. So we've learned through our review of the income and expenses for the past 5 years for this property that the total annual income hasn't fluctuated much throughout the past 5 years, except for 2020, which is the exception. It is based on the investor's expectations for appreciation. Again, we haven't seen the income for this property rise so much in the past 5 years. And it is also influenced by the required rate of return on other investment vehicles.
I can tell you that we all understand cap rates. We've been doing this for quite a while. We know the basis of it. I think what we need to see from you is why this particular property deserves a higher cap rate. We don't have to go through the theories of cap rates. Again, on the board, we understand those.
Okay. I did want to make so I did want to bring to the board's attention though just the
Yeah, I don't want to confuse you in how I'm just saying that you can assume that we understand the basis behind it.
Okay,
Okay.
for sure. All right, so I would like the board to note that this property for the annual income has not fluctuated much throughout the past 5 years then. Okay, well, going on to page 5 of my brief here, I'm going to be referring to pages 5 and 11. I will allow you all to read this in your review of my evidence. So we do see that for retail property that there is a negative outlook for retail properties. RioCan sold over 100 of their properties to focus on the live, work, and play model. And there has been a shift to online with many retailers closing their physical locations. The retail space in the US had about 1 billion square feet, and those were either closed or converted, or owners of those retail properties had to offer lower rents. So because, as we all know, that there has been a trend towards e-commerce.
We're dealing with a convenience store here.
Okay.
How many convenience store locations are there? If you can convince us that with all this going on, there's going to be a lot of empty spots that can be housing convenience stores, because I don't think people are going to be buying, their Slurpees on the computer. I think they're going to go to the store or buy their cigarettes. So, how is it impacting this to the property?
So I guess in my mind, if we were to look at if 7-Eleven ever vacated this location, would it sell as a retail? Probably more likely so. And would the investor be able to find an occupant for it? So we're seeing risk there. So I suppose with that being said, I'll just move on to our cap rate comparables here. So the cap rates that we've derived on page 24 of my evidence range from 6.18% to 8.78%. We've included photos of our cap rate comparables on pages 25 to 31 of our evidence. And I will skip on to page 32 here. So the subject property itself, it is an older 7-Eleven location. As I had mentioned, the rent for this property has not fluctuated much throughout the past 5 years. So based on those factors, we've applied a cap rate of 7.5%. Now, our cap rate ranges here, they do include the application of the 5% non-recoverable expense. So if the board were to choose to eliminate the 1% non-recoverable expense, we ask that the cap rate be adjusted upwards by 25 basis points. And that would conclude my cap rate presentation.
Thank you.
And I assume too that the board has heard our non-recoverable expense study quite a few times. So if the board wishes, I can go over that, or we can leave it as is.
I know Mr. McIntyre and myself are very familiar with it. I'm not sure about Mr. Robinson. Do you feel that you need to hear anything, Mr. Robinson?
Quite honestly, I wouldn't mind hearing that.
Okay. No worries.
Thank you.
Okay, so the non-recoverable expenses, so what the unrecovered expenses are not, so the 5% that we applied. The allowance is not an expense relating to the standard management fees charged by the owner or a third-party property manager related to the day-to-day operation of the property. These standard management fees are usually recovered in whole or in part from the tenants unless the tenants are on a gross or semi-gross lease. What the non-recoverable expense is and what it has always intended to be is an allowance that is a stabilized expense involving a number of typical non-recoverable expenses relating to the proper and competent operation of the property. So these expenses, they're virtually never recovered from tenants under any circumstances, including tenants who are on net leases. So I believe we provide a list of what those non-recovered expenses are. And I do just have to find the page. It is a lengthy document here.